News is projecting former President Donald Trump has won the 2024 presidential election.
As of now, Fox News projecting Trump currently has 277 electoral college votes.
So Trump won the election, and that's going to come as a big surprise to most of New York, which voted 55% in favor of Vice President Harris. But even though Trump won, many progressive policies heavily supported in New York City itself, like liberal immigration laws, go against the platform he got elected on and may govern from. Which means that some really strange things are going to start happening here, especially concerning the asylum crisis.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
President-elect Trump celebrating victory in the presidential race.
This is about 20 minutes ago. The AP declared Trump the winner over Vice President Kamala Harris.
The greatest comeback in American political history. I mean, we've never seen anything like this.
With the arrival of more than 200,000 migrants to the Big Apple, New York City has spent more than $5 billion on the migrant crisis.
New York and New Jersey, blue states, how might these election results be felt in our area?
That's the story of the whole election, is that Donald Trump did better in Democratic areas than he did last time around.
A new warning about a dangerous Venezuelan prison gang making deeper inroads in the U.S. The Department of Homeland Security says members of the notorious Tren de Aragua gang are increasingly drawn to sanctuary cities.
I mentioned how President-elect Trump outperformed his 2020 numbers, even in blue areas. Let's put a finer point on that. In 2020, he lost New Jersey by about 16 points. This year, he lost New Jersey by about 5 points.
So I would expect that Democrats are going to continue to try and run to the right, they're going to try and run to the middle, and they're going to try and be the moderate or centrist party. But they got some work cut out for them, because I think many people tie the Democrats to the far left.
So Donald Trump has defied the odds and become president of this country once again. But what nobody's talking about is that this totally changes New York City's relationship with our federal government, and it's going to have a massive impact on immigration, but not in the way most people think. Because in many ways, New York City is and remains the focal point of the asylum crisis here in America. And when this crisis first began, Mayor Adams was initially receptive to the idea of thousands of folks coming here to seek a better life. But after thousands came, thousands more decided to do the exact same thing, and as of right now, we've got over 212,000 people who've come to New York fleeing poverty, seeking the American dream. And because of New York City's generous right to shelter rules, everyone's been offered a free place to stay, which is great because it's kept families from having to live out on the street, but it hasn't exactly been sustainable, which is why many of those same families are now being evicted from New York's shelter system. And since that shelter system isn't helping people get jobs, many of these folks are just as homeless now as they were before they moved in, and they certainly haven't achieved the American dream, which was the whole point of this process. But the real reason a Donald Trump presidential victory represents a huge challenge for New York is because this is still a sanctuary city, and as such, it's going to continue to be a destination not just for people wishing to emigrate to America, but also for people who want to come here because they can hide from federal immigration authorities. And as you're about to see, New York City could soon become one of the last places in America where folks at odds with our nation's laws will be able to stay. And with pockets of gang activity spreading across our country already, not just in New York, but in other places like Colorado and Texas, there exists the possibility that New York City, with its sanctuary doors wide open, will still see continued migration, not from well-meaning individuals, but from those who have a criminal past and the desire for a crime-filled future. Which is bad news, not just for New Yorkers, but also for the 65,000 asylum seekers still living here. I did the other thing. So here we are, Trump Tower. That's the front entrance. It's about 12 o'clock the day after the election. And it's not too crazy. No protesters, nothing wild, no megaphones, no crowds. But some people here might start doing that once the new president takes over and starts doing things that they disagree with.
New York and New Jersey, blue states, how might these election results be felt in our area?
In New York, there's actually a number of congressional seats that seem to have gone from Republican to Democrat. And right now, that's the last chance that the Democrats have to hold on to any of the House. They lost the Senate, they lost the presidency. So that could be a big deal nationally.
So according to the official results, as a state, New York voted 55% in favor of Vice President Harris. New York is not a state that voted for President Trump. For reference, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won New York State with 59% of the vote, and President Biden outperformed Hillary, winning over 60% of the vote in New York. Which means that even though Donald Trump may have won a stunning victory, and even though this may be one of the greatest political comebacks of all time, he didn't win New York at all. He lost. He lost by just about as much as he always loses. And what that means is many of the people here do not want Trump laws. They do not want Trump policies. They do not want to see him govern on the platform that he ran upon. That's for sure. And as a sanctuary city, New York itself already exists in opposition somewhat to federal laws it doesn't like. And it's been doing that for all 4 years of the past presidential administration, which many say is the reason the asylum crisis here looks the way it does. Remember, this all started here back in 2022, and it really started growing in 2023, and we've still got around 65,000 individuals living in our shelter system, which is supposed to be helping them become sufficient, but is failing in that mission because it's not part of a greater purpose of actually connecting these people with jobs and the future many of them were promised when they moved in. Instead, all our shelter system has really provided people with is the opportunity to fill out asylum paperwork and not much else. However, our right to shelter rules, they're not going away anytime soon. Those were not on our recent ballots. That was not something that's been voted on. And even if a new president does come in and close our borders completely, there are still thousands of people in this country right now with legal permission to be here waiting for their asylum cases to play out. And unfortunately, there are also quite a few people in this country that have ties to dangerous criminal organizations. We're talking at least 600 known associates of a dangerous Venezuelan gang. Tren de Aragua is the name of it, which started in a prison in that country a few years ago. And that gang is now here. There have been reports of gang members living in some of the city's own funded shelters that are supposed to help asylum seekers, creating a situation here that's not only very bad for the people the asylum crisis is named after, because they can't actually get the help they need or achieve anything if gang members with weapons control where they live and exploit them, but this is also a potential problem for New York because of how popular Donald Trump now is on a national level. He didn't just win an electoral victory, he also won the popular vote. It's very likely that he could govern on what he ran on, and some in New York may see this as an opportunity to oppose that by doubling down on sanctuary-type policies that don't actually help people who really need it.
While we're speaking of New York and New Jersey, are you surprised to see the actual total numbers? Usually these are obviously tried and true blue states.
That's the story of the whole election, is that Donald Trump did better in Democratic areas than he did last time around. And it wasn't an enormous change most of the places. It was 2 or 3 percentage points. But the race and the electorate is so divided that that's all.
So the key word, unfortunately, here is division. New York is very divided from how many states and many voters feel about our upcoming new president. And that's probably only going to become even more apparent as 2025 rolls around and he takes office for the second time. And even though the asylum crisis as a whole may change with less people entering the country through ports of entry or through the borders, it is ridiculous to think that cities like New York with progressive leaders won't rise up in opposition to that in some way, potentially passing policies that don't exactly make the asylum crisis better, even though they claim to. Like our right to shelter policy, which doesn't actually help people. Yes, it lets you move into a former hotel or into one of the gigantic tents out on Randall's Island, but it just does that. It's not actually helping people get on their feet and achieve the American dream, yet it exists, and it's something Republicans complain about, so maybe more of that will keep happening, even though it's not actually benefiting the very people who move into those shelters. Again, these are dangerous environments in many cases. Police are banned from going inside of them because this is a sanctuary city, so our local law enforcement that has plenty of resources to keep the president safe with all these checkpoints and stuff over here, they're not allowed to go into our shelters and patrol them looking for people who might be breaking the law. They're only allowed in if they've got a warrant for a specific individual, and what this does is this creates places that are more akin to like a minimum security prison because you've got gang members who are actually in charge in there, not law enforcement, not the city. And this is not hyperbole either. It's out there for everyone who wants to see and look at it. New York's sanctuary status is actually aiding people who aren't here to help anybody but themselves in an illegal manner. And these are the results of bad policies, not because the asylum seekers themselves are bad, absolutely not, but because bad people are allowed to take advantage of laws that aren't protecting those who really need it. But sadly, the right to shelter system will probably remain in its current state, not actually doing anything to help people, people. And some here will brag about it as a badge of pride because in their minds, they're resisting tyranny and standing up for democracy against a president they dislike. And with 55% of the state voting the way that they have pretty much in every other presidential election, the politics of New Yorkers as a whole aren't realigning, even though some political analysts are predicting that there will be a movement towards the center from those who may have previously been associated with left-leaning policies.
Do you see change coming to how people run elections now going forward, even next November?
So, one of the interesting things is that I can use the New Jersey 7th congressional district as an example. The candidate, the Democrat, she was very, very progressive and very, very left. She tried to run to the middle and didn't get there fast enough, and she lost. So I would expect that Democrats are going to continue to try and run to the right. They're going to try and run to the middle, and they're going to...
Yeah, nothing that New York City does in the near future is going to change any of that. I don't think there's going to be much of a realignment here at all, and that's because many of our notable elected officials were able to win by landslide margins without changing anything. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she won 70-30, which means she was more popular in her own district than Vice President Harris was on a state level. And she's going to be under a lot of pressure because as Donald Trump starts his second presidential term and starts doing things, there won't be too many progressive voices of opposition if people start moderating like they very well may in other parts of the country. Many of our local progressive leaders will be looked at as the voice of reason, and local progressives probably aren't going to change their positions on anything from immigration to inflation to jobs to taxes. Nope. And as far as local politics here goes, I don't think you're going to have this running to the center, so to speak. It might actually be the opposite. You may have people take more extreme positions than they did in the past because there is so much national progressive pressure, but it can only go to those who still hold views that are in direct opposition to what people in many parts of the country, including swing states, voted against. And there's going to be a lot of people in New York who see their beliefs as a counterbalance to what they think is a problem for America. And there's still a large portion of the traditional media world that is very upset with this Trump victory. Up until election night, he wasn't supposed to win this thing. He was actually down in polling. That slowly started to change after the votes came in and were counted, but 538, that's what the most reputable polling thing out there. Well, that guy, Nate Silver, he's thrown out his model saying that it doesn't accurately predict elections, and he was supposed to be one of the most accurate. But hopefully something can be done to help the actual asylum seekers, because we've still got 65,000 of them living in shelters, and they're not being prepared in any way to reach for what New York said they were going to get when they moved in. Many of them are now so homeless that they're living in tents outside of the shelters where they moved into, and they have to do that because they have to go back to the shelters to get their mail, and the mail contains their asylum information. So we'll have to see what happens with that. We've still got a very big humanitarian crisis on our hands here in New York, and it's a problem that's probably not going to get fixed through political stuff because that's what brought it here. It needs to start helping actual people. But what do you think about that? How would you go about fixing New York City's asylum crisis? And do you think that a lot of people are going to be asked to leave the country? Do you think many asylum applications are going to get denied? Do you think New York is going to see more migration from folks who may have been told to leave the country and don't want to and come here specifically because this is a sanctuary city? And how is that going to impact the legitimate goals of real asylum seekers who are the vast majority of these folks to begin with? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.